Hello, my name is Dr. Mitchell, and welcome to the concept of creating dynamic do-nows for English and language arts. This should be an exciting session. During this session, we're going to determine the importance of a do-now. We're going to know the 4 critical criteria of do-nows, according to Doug Lumov. We're going to understand how to frame our do-nows for our current curricula that we use. And we're going to view some do-now samples created just for CKLA, EL, and AF. Strong exemplars will help propel us forward. During the closure of this session, we're going to read 161 to 164, Teach Like a Champion, written by Doug Lumov. And as a result, we're going to submit a summary writing into Schoolology, the do-nows, and later during our PLC discussions, discuss the exemplars shared, but also the readings from those particular pages. Now, the word of the day is continued from our first session, and it is preparation. Preparation. Well, how many syllables does preparation have? Preparation. Did you say 4? Of course you did. Very good. Now let's take a look at preparation. Preparation. Today we want to hone in on that schwa sound. Why the schwa? Because starting in grades 2 all the way through 5, that is a tested item on our TCAP test. So where do you see the schwa? Did you say the upside down E? You're correct. And did you say the upside down E in parentheses? You are correct. The schwa sound makes the sound. Preparation. Very good. Now, one of the questions for preparation today is, what does the prefix pre mean in preparation? Did you say it means before? You're absolutely correct. The idea here is that prefixes are important. And can you name the base word for preparation? Did you say prepare? You are correct. The idea linking here is today is that base words and root words are important. Let's continue on. Now, in creating dynamic do-nows for English and language arts, the very most important thing about it is that it's part of your lesson planning. We began that last week, but today we know that do-nows start your lesson before even the teacher begins. So it's very important how we craft and frame our do-nows, whether it be for a preface for the current day's lesson, whether it be a review from previous day's lesson, or whether it is a remediation during RTI. Do-nows are important. Now, there are 4 criteria for do-nows according to Doug Lumov. Well, I've given you some sentence starters, some listen fors as you watch the video created by Teaching Like a Champion. So what are they? They are completed with, finishing that critical criteria. 3 to 5, what? Critical criteria. Pencil and paper to produce what? That's a critical criteria. And task-oriented, what? Critical criteria. So let's focus our eyes into the video and listen for the critical criteria.
Week 29, do now. Oh boy, this is a great one. Why do you never see elephants hiding in trees? Because they're so good at it. Your students should never have to ask themselves, what am I supposed to be doing when they enter your classroom? Nor should they be able to claim to not know what they should be doing. You want students to know what to do, and to know there is no ambiguity here. Those 2 goals, being clear with students about what to be working on and eliminating the excuses that lead to distractions, are the rationale for Do Now. Do Now is a short activity that you have written on the board or is waiting at their desks before they enter. The Do Now means that students are hard at work even before you have fully entered the room. As soon as they enter the classroom, they start the Do Now. This is directly following the entry routine. Students begin the Do Now as soon as they enter the classroom. So, they are both productive during every minute and ready for instruction as soon as you start. Do Now ensures that they have done the anticipatory set and are thinking about what's coming next. An effective Do Now, which can bring incredible learning power to a room, should conform to 4 critical criteria to ensure that it remains focused, efficient, and effective. The first criteria of an effective Do Now is that it should be able to be completed without any direction from the teacher and without any discussion with their classmates. The second criteria is that it should only take 3 to 5 minutes to complete. You don't want this stretching into your instruction time. Criteria number 3 is that the activity should require putting a pencil to paper. That is, there should be a written product from it. This written product allows you not only to make it more rigorous and more engaging, but it allows you to better hold students accountable because you can clearly see whether they are doing it or not. Criteria 4 is to remember that it needs to be task-oriented. This is not something just for bells and whistles. The activity should preview the day's lesson, or at the very least, review a recent lesson. The Do Now technique works, and it works because of its consistency and because of your preparation. Teacher, I didn't know what to do. Students can say this if there isn't a Do Now in the same place every single day, because then students can claim plausible deniability. It doesn't matter where you place the Do Now. It could be on the board, it could be on the student's desk, it could be a PowerPoint slide. The main point is that it needs to be in the same place at the same time every day. What this does is it saves you precious moments when you would otherwise be transcribing the Do Now on the board. And you can use this time to interact with students and give the students who are struggling with the Do Now a little assistance. This technique works really great when you're a stationary teacher and students are coming to you, like in a homeroom classroom or a specialized art class or English zone. However, I think even traveling teachers can use this technique effectively. A lot of times I feel pressured to get myself prepared and settled into a classroom as quickly as possible. And I want to jump right into teaching before I'm actually ready. A Do Now task allows the students to prepare themselves and gives you a few minutes to settle down into the new homeroom class or whatever atmosphere you're going into. Try it, see how it goes.
Excellent. So let's revisit these sentence frames. Number 1, the critical criteria for a Do Now is that it should be completed with, did you say, no direction? Very good. Boys and girls without prompting should know what to do on a Do Now without any assistance from the adult. Number 2, 3 to 5. Did you say minutes? That is correct. A Do Now allows time for teachers to allow people into that remote space, allow people into face-to-face space, getting ready for the learning. But it also can add as a hook, engagement, and intrinsic piece to get students ready for what you're going to provide them for the remainder of the 55 minutes of course. Pencil and paper, to do what you say? That's correct. To give the teacher a product of what they learned thus far. And task-oriented for? Yes, either for a review or a preview of the day's lesson. Very good, let's continue on. So now, as the year goes on, we will make some rigorous adjustments to our Do Nows, where we will incorporate some learning points where data shows a large number of students are still behind. For example, the NWEA where we see groups of students fall to winter, winter to spring, are still struggling with possibly key ideas and details. Other than being a review, a preview is also remediation. Great. Now, framing our do nows. They don't have to be the same way every day. You want to keep your students engaged. And part of keeping them engaged is tapping into their learning styles and interests. So let's take a look. If you have a physical learner in English and language arts, you might want to incorporate some do nows that allow them for being on mute and counting out syllables. If you have logical learners, well, have some sentence frames that create a paragraph where students can write them in sequential order or move them in sequential order if you've emailed them some prior printed materials. What about students who are social learners? You might want them to work the chat, put in some discussion responses where you can call out once everyone is in the remote area. What about solo writing? For those that are solitary learners, they like to sit and reflect. Give them 3 minutes to 5 minutes to write out the response to a prompt. What about a visual learner? They can examine the image. The examining of images gives us great pointage in text features, where we do not focus on that quite enough in the state of Tennessee. What about your oral learner? Listening for the letter. We've got a sample for that in just a moment. And your verbal learner. This is a great time to insert some vocabulary practice, and don't forget your 3 categories of schema, domain, and academic words. Great, let's move on. Now, here are some samples that we can pull out of our CKLA curriculum, first grade. Well, students will replace the beginning and end letters to create a new word. Of course, the teacher may have the word nap listed. The directions would be to replace, and possibly students could come up with nag, gag, gap, cap, can, pan, and can. Could that be done in 3 to 5 minutes and boost your engagement for the current day's lesson? Yes. What about how many words can you create? Make it a competition for the students that will definitely keep them engaged and on task to complete the assignment for the do now. Now, what learner would be most engaged from this activity? Write this down. Take note. We'll discuss in PLC. Now, what about CKLA first grade? Part of the directions would be how many phonemes are in each word. Students will be on mute and they could say d-ish, 3, m-e, 2, f-ite, 3, o, 1, m-at, 3. This will give them a chance to call out and reflect on how many phonemes they hear. Now, what learner would be most engaged from this do now? Write it down. We'll discuss in PLC. Now, what about CKLA first grade, where you have advanced learners or more of a challenge, rigorous work for do now for later in the week? We have the character Beth, and she says, I am Beth, I am 10. I am at camp, and camp is fun. The directions would be to write a sentence or sentences using I correctly as a capital letter, telling us about you. What learner would be most engaged, especially with the picture to the right? Now, what about CKLA second grade? And we heard
Bumblebee, bumblebee, buzzing all around the bright begonias. Bumblebee, bumblebee, better fly away from me. Best be on your best behavior. Bye bye, little bumblebee. Bumblebee.
The singer uses the bee as an alliteration tool for her song. How many bee words do you hear? And can you write them correctly? Then, can you write a stanza using alliteration with a specific letter? This would be the do now. Maybe 6 words with the letter B. What learner would be most engaged from this activity? Teacher, if it's not too loud for you, this would be most interesting for the students, and I believe they will be ready for the learning. Now, CKLA, second grade do now. We must keep in mind that second graders must read a page and a half of reading and answer questions. So we must present our second graders with more complex, rigorous texts that are longer, building stamina, not just an intermediate, but for second graders. Now, in this one, the directions would be, welcome, come on in. While we wait, practice your fluency by reading a portion of the story, Kate Visits Nan. And while reading, clap the syllables for the 2-syllable words embedded within text. So you should see students, I'm Kate, Skipper, last summer. When I was 9, my mom and dad took me to visit my Nan. Nan is my mom's mom. She is an artist and she has a cabin out in the West. I'm sure they would enjoy clapping out those syllables, but it would also prompt them to practice the fluency. Now, to move into deeper look at the text, why not ask them, who is the subject of the story? Tell me a character trait of Kate. What learner would be most engaged from this do now? Now, CKLA, second grade do now. Look at the images, choose a character, and write a dialogue caption for what you can infer the character is saying, thinking, or feeling. The choice here is differentiation of product, where the students will be able to take a pick of who they wanted to look at, write some wonderings, and what they see from the image that is presented. What learner would be most engaged from this do now? Now let's take a look. We're moving into Expeditionary Learning, grades 3 and 4 do now, where the students would be able to choose one of these paragraphs, paragraph 7, paragraph 8 or 9, read it, and infer what the theme is from what's being listed in the title. What learner would be most engaged from this activity? And when we look at our Achievement First curriculum for 5th grade, we would take the story, a portion of the story 11, and the students will read the paragraph and infer or determine how this character feels about turning 11. You will use the evidence from the paragraph to help you respond. Now, so that you can get responses that are for intermediate children, I suggest preparing them with a sentence structure. The character feels, I know this because line expresses a feeling of, that way they can respond with strength, and it gives them a guideline of how to look at the text being presented. What learner will be most engaged from this do now? Now, as a closure to this professional development, I would like us to read pages 161 to 164, Teach Like a Champion by Doug Lumov. It is the book presented here. Now, once you read, please submit in Schoology Your courses, your discussion response. 4, how are you going to use these do nows as a hook, as a review, to remediate, or as a preface to your lessons for the academic engagement within 3 to 5 minutes for introduction to your course. I thank you, and I'll see you in Schoology and in PLCs.